Everyone, welcome back to the workshop. We are looking at another diode laser today, and this is a new company to me. It's a company called Wizmaker. They have come out with a line of lasers they are calling the Wizmaker. This one is the 20 watt L1 laser from them. We're going to take a look at its features, how it performs, and share all that information with you. So if you're interested in this laser or just curious how it does, stay tuned. We're going to jump right into it. This is the Wizmaker L1. This is the 20 watt version, and according to their website, they've got about 3 different versions ranging from a 12 watt, 20 watt, and a 36 watt diode laser. So this is right in the middle of the pack, so we are going to check it out. So as I mentioned, this is the 20 watt version of the laser. It does have a working area of 400 by 400 millimeters square, and then it also is supposed to have an ultra-fine spot of 0.06 by 0.06 millimeters for the laser focus spot. Now, in a 20 watt, that is pretty impressive. And so I might try to run some curve tests, see if that does look like it's fairly square. And if it does that fine a point, it should also be great for engraving. The other nice feature about this one is supposed to be ultra fast. They're advertising up to 400 millimeters a second or 24,000 millimeters a minute. Again, that is very fast for these lasers. And so we'll need to test that in our engraving scales and just see. Now, mind you, in smaller items, they might not be able to get up to that speed that quickly, so you might need to play with your overscan settings, but we will test that out for sure and see what it looks like. Other features on this laser, it does include limit switches, so you can do your homing to the front left and start off from there. It also does have an e-stop button, which is nice from a safety standpoint, that you can hit that e-stop button and it will shut the machine and the laser all off. Not a whole lot of other safety features on this. You're pretty standard, just has the shroud around the bottom of the laser with a small viewing window. And then of course they do include the generic set of laser safety glasses. As always, these are great to use, but I strongly recommend you buy a quality pair that is going to fit you properly and that is rated for these diode lasers. So you're looking at something that is rated for a wavelength of 450 plus or minus nanometers, and then an optical density of 4+. So I'll have a link to some down below if you want to get a more custom fit yourself that is completely specifically rated for these diode lasers. Now this kit also came with the air pump. This is a 24 volt air pump. There was no rating on this. I'm going to assume it's in the 30 liters per minute range, and it does have the nice air hose that's fairly thick so that it doesn't want to kink, but it should allow plenty of airflow to the nozzle. It does have an integrated air assist nozzle in the bottom. We'll take a look at that as well to see just how fine that is. Again, most modern lasers are coming with those. If you're doing any cutting, you definitely want to have air assist. And even when you're engraving, the variable speed on this pump is going to be great for having just a little bit of positive airflow over that lens to keep any smoke and debris from getting up onto your cover lens, making your laser work longer without maintenance and protecting that cover lens. All right, let's speak real briefly about the build. I'm not going to go into full detail of it because it is fairly simple. Most of the components come well assembled, and you just really 4 bolts in each corner to put the frame together, 2 bolts on each side for the gantry, adjust some belts, screw on your feet, attach the cables, and that's about it. They do provide a decent manual. It's well documented with photos. There could maybe be a few extra words and such in there to explain the steps, but look at the photos carefully. It does describe which bolts you need to use in each step and where they go. And take your time, just walk through it, and it should not have any problem with that. They do provide your basic Allen wrenches needed for putting this together, and then they do also provide the wrench, which is important for being able to adjust the eccentric nuts. Now, there's one thing I noticed on mine is this top gantry seemed a little bit tight, so I did need to bring this over to the middle, loosen it up so that it ran a little bit smoother. And then you may notice the first few times you run it, it may feel a little bit rough, but those wheels will smooth out after a day or so and make this operation fairly smooth. Again, you also want to adjust your belts. They do have some bolts on the back with to secure them, and then bolts to tighten or loosen your belts. Again, you want to make sure that everything's moving smoothly so that it's not skipping, but that it's not too tight. So take some time, make sure your belts are adjusted, make sure your wheels are adjusted so that things move smoothly but not loosely, and your machine will operate quite well. The other thing that I will comment on is cable management. Now that is a thing with all these open frame diode lasers that seems to be very tricky. Some do it well, some seems to be an afterthought. There's a nice happy medium here. They do provide these nice plastic clips that both connect to the cables, and I routed mine along the back, and then the air hose routed mine on top, and then one on the side just to keep them out of the way. And that overall does seem to keep the cables moving nicely and off of your material and not sticking into the machine at all. So again, take your time, make sure those are spaced out appropriately. You want them to hold your cables in place, but give them a lot of positive movement around. And once you have that all in place, you shouldn't have to worry about it after that. But my only gripe on the setup of this machine is with the control panel here. I really liked having the e-stop button here, but having these buttons right next to the cables sticking out straight up, just really annoying. I really wish more of them would put them along the side of the box, get those cables, your power and your communication cable out of the way. It'll give you easier access to the top, and it'll keep these cables from being they're not going to get bumped, and they're not going to get in the way of you hitting that e-stop button when it is. So minor gripe, it's really not going to adjust the function. Just watch your cables, maybe even put some extra clips on just to keep them out of the way or something. But if those were on the side, I would say this would be so much better. So that is the basic specs and a little information on the build. Now let's get to what everybody wants. Let's start doing the tests on this. We're going to run some cut tests. We'll do some engraving tests, and then we'll see if maybe we can crank out a quick project or so with it. So let's jump right into that part. All right, for our cut tests, we are going to do some of my standard tests. I use a lot of 8-inch Baltic birch. Now this is a little bit harder of plywood than your craft plywood, but I use it a lot, so I'm going to be testing that, as well as I have a couple flavors of 1/4 inch. This is a 1/4 inch sanded plywood you can get at Home Depot, and this is a 5mm Revolution ply, I believe, from Lowe's. So we're going to try both of those in kind of more of your typical big box store materials that you might find that the common hobbyist is going to be cutting with this laser. So we will do cutting tests on all these, and then I will also do an engrave test. So let's jump into all those, get those done, and take a look at them when they're ready to go. All right, so we ran a variety of cut tests, and here is the first one. This is the Baltic birch plywood, and as you can see in the cut, it did barely squeak out 500mm a minute at 100% power. However, there is a little bit of fraying just on the back side. You can kind of see there, it did clip the edges a little bit. So realistically, I would probably run this laser at maybe 450 and 90% power, just to make sure that it runs through more of your material. I never like to say that it can run at that top speed, because if you run into any imperfections in the wood, then you're going to run into areas where it does not cut all the way through. And then we also did the engraving test on this one, and as you can see, I went from about 4,000mm a minute on up to 12,000mm a minute. Now I did have to go into the machine settings and change it. By default, the controller was limited to 6,000mm a minute in both the X and Y. Even though that is advertised as running faster. If you want to jump up into these higher speeds, you're going to go into your controller settings and need to bump that up. So keep that in mind. Do that at your own discretion. But here we do have a bit of a gradient, and down at the 4000, it's just barely marking at 10%, and then it is also giving a fairly deep impression. I don't know if you can see the divot it does. So if you're going for an epoxy fill type thing or a paint fill, definitely you'd want to run it slower and get that deeper burn. But if you're just going for your kind of color range, then I would say you're going to be somewhere in the maybe the 9,000 to 10,000 millimeters a minute range. At that is where you're just starting to drop off anything from 10%, maybe really targeting 20% to 90 to 100% power in that range. And that would get you somewhere with this lighter colored birch plywood. Now, if this was walnut or cherry, a darker hardwood, you'd probably need to run these settings again and see how it falls in for that wood. But on this lighter Baltic type wood and probably basswood, maybe even pine, these settings are going to get you fairly close. I also jumped up into the 5 to 6 millimeter 1/4 inch range, and I ran 2 cut tests. So here is the Home Depot 1/4 inch sanded plywood, and this is the 5 millimeter Revolution ply from Lowe's. You can see they're fairly close, but again, there's some minor differences between the two. You have a little more cutting at lower power on this side. And so once again, as you're using your material, you're going to want to run tests on individual materials. You can't just say 1/4 inch wood is going to cut at X power. So, but in this case, both of them were cutting pretty well, even up to 500 millimeters a minute. Now, even though the settings for this 1/8 inch are similar to this 1/4 inch, you got to keep in mind that this is a lighter quality wood. This is definitely hardwood layers all the way through, where this wood most likely has a softwood poplar style core on both of these. So that's why you're getting similar results. Now, if you had a much lighter weight plywood in 1/8 inch, definitely these numbers are going to go even higher. So all that to say, run your material tests on this one. This one was doing pretty well. I would feel pretty good about running this at 475 to 500 millimeters a minute on either of these 1/4 inch materials. And over here, pretty much the same, probably in that 450, 475, and 90 to 100% power. And now I want to actually test the engraving and run a photorealistic image onto some light colored wood. We'll get that set up and run and see how it comes out. All right, and so there we have it. This completed. This is just under 5 inches tall and about 3.5 inches wide. This did take about 32 minutes to finish. Did run it at 12,000 millimeters a minute, 100% power, and 317 DPI, which is an interval of 0.08 millimeter. And as you can see, and I'll try to put a close-up picture on the screen, that this retains some pretty decent detail. And so while I can't quite measure to see if their 0.06 by 0.06 millimeter interval is accurate, I'm just barely seeing some lines here. If I drop that down, it would of course increase the speed, but might even increase the detail a bit. But even at this, at 0.08, very happy with the results from this. So I would not have a problem using this for engraving images, and even just solid matter is going to be just that great. So let's take a look at some raw cutting power, see how thick of a material we can get through, and we'll check that out next. All right, now, so I've actually taken off the protective shroud for this, and in doing so, I'm going to be very sure that I'm wearing my laser safety glasses during this operation, as you should, even if that's in place. But this will allow us to better see what's going on and get a little bit closer to the material. And what I'm doing now is, instead of focusing at the top of the material, I'm trying to bring it down as much as I can so that we lower that fine point of focus more towards the center of it. Now, the thicker the material it is, the harder it is going to be, because you only have a finite amount between the tip of the air assist nozzle and your material. But we're going to bring it down so it's a couple millimeters above that material. That should get it about a third or so into this. I know I've got a roughly 1/2 inch piece of cedar, and then I have a piece of 3/4 inch pine. Now, I'm using these. I know there are softer woods, but realistically with these lasers, that's what you're going to be able to do in these thicker woods. You get into some harder woods like maple and oak and such, it's going to struggle to do this at any speed that's really worth it. But we're going to see how well we can do it in these materials, and we'll check the results when we're done. All right, so as you can see, it did make it through both those materials. It made it through this 1/2 inch cedar in 2 passes, and that was at 175 millimeters a minute at 100% power. However, I did have some charring on the backside, so this would probably be better if we made a balance of passes and speed, that you increase the passes a couple times and maybe double the speed as well. It would take about the same time to cut out, but it would keep moving and it'd be less likely to leave this charring and such. And then I tried the pine, and the first time it was 175 and 3 passes. Wanted to make it through, and that was at 100% power. Wanted to make it through, but you see I had to push it out. There were just some little small nibs hanging on. And so then I increased it to about 300 speed, 5 passes, and 100% power, and it took 5.5 passes because there was just a little bit hanging on there, and it made that final last half pass it punched through. And on that one, you see it's fairly clean, but again, this is a 1-inch circle, and it took quite a while to get through that. So while you can do it, if you're doing a very large object, it is going to take an awful long time. It's going to take multiple passes. So maybe not super practical, but definitely plausible, and some softer wood that you can get through thicker material in multiple passes with this machine. And that stacks up pretty close to all the other 20-watt-ish lasers that we've been looking at. Last thing I want to look at is the serviceability of this laser. Any laser you get, it's going to take some routine maintenance and then some more occasional bigger things to maintain. So your more routine maintenance is obviously going to be cleaning this. Now, I've taken this module off, and just so you can see in some of the limited testing we've been doing here, you can kind of see that there is a little bit of residue starting to collect on that end. Now that should come off easily with some alcohol, but we can also take these other 2 screws off and get at what should be the cover lens under here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off really quick. We'll take a brief look at that. Okay, so with those loose, you can see this cone is just going to slide out of the way. And in here, you will see the end of our laser module. Now, this on top here is a brass cover lens. And actually, I'm glad I took this off. As you notice, it's a little loose there. This should just tighten on like so. It doesn't need to be torqued on really tight, but you don't want it moving around. That can cause small aberrations in your laser beam. But what you can do is you can actually remove this, and inside of here, underneath here is your actual focus lines. Now that is deep in there. You want to keep that clean and protected. So I'm not going to take this off for too long. But as you see inside of here, there is a brass ring that would come out, and in there is a cover lens. Now this is a very common part amongst a lot of lasers, and so they will work pretty well. But what you want to do is you want to clean this inside and out with as pure of alcohol. So like 90% isopropyl alcohol is best for this. And what this does is it protects your inside, your focus lens, from getting damaged. This is a consumable part, so you would rather this cover lens get damaged than your interior lens. So this is something that can be cleaned and can be replaced. Hopefully the inside lens is never anything that you need to touch or replace. As long as you keep this cover lens on here and keep it clean, that should keep your laser working in proper order for its 10,000 hours or so of lifespan. So this is something you do want to check. You want to make sure this is on there snug. You want to make sure this is clean. So on here, just a lint-free cloth with a little alcohol or like a Q-tip. Just make sure it doesn't leave any residue or debris on there. Let that dry, and then we'll put this cover back on. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for my initial testing and review of this Wizmaker L1 20-watt diode laser. Overall, I think it performs on par or slightly better than a lot of the other 20-watt lasers we've looked at. The frame itself is very rigid and it goes together fairly easy, really hard to mess it up or get it out of square. Most of the adjustments on there were very simple to kind of tweak as far as the belts and the wheels, and got it up and running very quickly. It performed very well. I appreciate the variable speed on the air pump and the fact that it has a nice cover lens on there with the integrated air assist cone. All good features I like to see. Not a whole lot of frills, not a lot of extra safety things such as flame detection and tilt, but you know, honestly, those, as good as they are, can sometimes give false positives and mess up your products as you're cutting them as well. So it's something that I'm not worried about, but I always make sure that I'm monitoring my lasers. As far as the basics, it's got an e-stop button, which is my preferred safety device on any CNC controlled device, whether it be a router or a laser. And overall, I think as is, I'm very happy with it. So I'm going to have links down below to where you can check out more about this, links to purchase it. It's available both on their site, where if you check right now, they do have a 10% off code for your first order. Otherwise, I'll also have links to Amazon if that's something that you're more comfortable with, but definitely check them out. They also have additional accessories such as honeycomb panels, enclosures, and rotaries and such. So it'll be interesting to see what else they come out with in the future, and hopefully we'll see more of them. I'd love to see a rail extension for this, as we've been looking at for other lasers as well. So Wizmaker, if you're watching, put that on your radar as well. I'd like to thank Wizmaker for sending this out to us for review. It's always appreciative for us to check these out and share them with you. So I hope that if you are looking at this one, you go and give them a look. And if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. And I want to thank you for stopping by to check out this video. I always appreciate the interaction I get with people, and I hope this was valuable to you. If you want to find out more about what's going on, definitely hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment. All those things go out to help my channel. But also check out the Sunday night live stream I do with the Clack Shack. He and I both got this Wizmaker, and I will actually link his video down below as well if you want to check out what he thought about it. But I'm sure we will be talking about this on one of our live streams coming up. So if that sounds good to you, check those out. They're Sundays at 7 p.m. Central. We go over kind of new items that are in our shop, new projects we've been working on, but we really love answering questions from the audience and helping people out during the live stream. So definitely check that out as well. Otherwise, thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for watching this video. I will catch you again soon, but I hope you can get out into your workshop and make something too. We'll catch you next time.